This?
Do it, girl.
Okay, let's do this. All right. We are back and life is in session and so is the bottom line. So I am
Gina.
just glad to be here today. How's it going, Sean?
Surviving the battle. Thank you. Every day is a good day. That's the way I look at it. We're in paradise. Look at that. Not a cloud in the sky.
Yes, we are, and lucky to be here. And today, Joy Fate is with us, and I'm really excited to have you here, Joy, and I'm glad.
So glad to do this. This is a great opportunity. Thank
Good.
you.
Welcome, Joy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we are, as we are winding up, Sean and I are always talking about this because we understand. We know where you are. We've been there, right?
Exactly. It's kind of hard to explain the old, if you have to explain, you wouldn't understand kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, running for city council can't be that hard, right? Right? Come on, man, right? I mean, you can do 80 things at once.
Sure.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
be 10 places at once, right?
You don't need to sleep.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's interesting, but we do it and we get through it, and here we are.
Yeah,
and
it's
so,
worth it. It's definitely something that you have to, you have to have some skin in the game, right?
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it. If you have something vested, you're going to fight hard. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of fighting hard, what are you going to bring to council, Joy? Can you tell our listeners? What's on your heart? What do you want to bring? What's your vision?
Well, I've lived in Ashland for 23 years, and it's where I raised my daughter, and I love my community. I mean, look outside, right? So we have this privilege of living in one of the most beautiful areas in the country.
That's right.
Right. And so having lived here for 23 years, why am I running for city council? I think my first answer would be relentless gentrification. Half of Ashland's residents.
Yeah, explain that so people understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Half of Ashland's residents are what we call rent burdened.
Yes.
And more specifically, severely rent burdened. And that means that people are paying more than 50% of their income in order to rent or a mortgage payment.
Exactly.
Right. And so, it's a challenging position because we're asking people to work here and to live here and to get involved in their community. And people don't have the resources to, pay the rent, much less be able to do all of the fun things.
And Joy, when you look at inflation is an 8% right now, and it's rent burden, it's food insecurity, it's do I pay the utilities, which are continuously going up?
Right. I mean, that's a huge deal. So, for instance, on our utility bills, I know plenty of people who are paying close to $100 a month in taxes and fees before they even use a drop of water or turn on a light.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, the thinking that, what's another $20 here, or what's another $5 there, but it adds up. I mean, people really are selling plasma here.
It's so funny because we didn't even talk
about.
about this, but that's something that Gina and I have been pounding the table on since we got on council, right? It's like, wait a minute. You constantly, and I think the person you're running against has a pretty shoddy record of saying one thing and voting for constant increases in utility bills and taxes and all this other stuff.
How that works. I mean,
I think it's crazy.
Candidates can really, they can say whatever they want, right?
Right.
But where the rubber hits the road is how are they voting? So it's disappointing to me that we have people saying that their values are one thing, and then they vote a completely different way.
Absolutely.
So how are you different?
Yeah, I like that too. I like how you said that. People tell you one thing, and then they show you who they are by how they vote. Right. That's the key thing. That's what's one of the biggest startling points that I've experienced running, being involved in politics.
For sure.
Is people look you in the eyes and they tell you, oh yeah, they do, oh yeah, and then they go around and they vote completely opposite. It's shocking, and I'm glad
It's disappointing,
I'm glad you feel
it's
that way.
disingenuous to voters.
Totally.
I think it's kind of a shady way to run
totally agree.
your campaign, but that's just me. So, I mean, from my perspective, transparency is the name of the game. Truth, honesty, transparency, and giving a voice to voters who generally don't have their voices represented.
And you spend a lot of time doing exactly that, right? With your work.
More than 10
in
years.
your volunteer work. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's got to be something else you're passionate about, right? I mean, housing,
Well, I really
affordability.
took, right. So, I took the position that, Joan Baez said it one way: action is the antidote to despair, right? So rather than my just sitting around and complaining about it, I felt kind of a personal obligation to step up and be the change, right? Everybody talks about, well, I'd like to see this, or I'd like to see that, or we shouldn't be doing this or that. But the reality is that be the change that you want to see in the world.
And in doing that, I don't know how many years, Joy, were you doing your underground shelter?
So, it amazes me that some people don't even know that this was
Well,
a
it was
thing.
so underground that
It was underground for a while until, but so at the beginning of COVID, for those who don't know, at the beginning of COVID, Ashland was shutting down just like the rest of the country was. And one of the problems that I saw was in our homeless community, absolutely nowhere to go, nowhere to safely shelter. The county said, go to the Greenway, go shelter there, and then kicked them out, and that whole conundrum. But so I think it was in March of 2019. I just said, I identified the need. We've got homeless people that are wandering our streets. There's nowhere to go. They're camping in Lithia Park, and we all know that that's really dangerous, right?
Exactly.
6-7 weeks ago, we had a guy trying to cook a meal in Lithia Park and set the hill on fire. That could have been devastating.
Thanks.
So, so I opened up an underground shelter, and with that, it was a low barrier shelter. I met people where they were at. If they had animals, if they were an addict, it didn't matter, right? So taking into consideration COVID restrictions, brought people in 6 feet apart. They could stay overnight. They could charge their electronic equipment. They got a good home cooked meal every day, and so it was something that needed to happen, right? And so I continued it for 3 years, and I didn't do it for power. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I saw a need, and I knew that I could, without having to jump through bureaucratical hoops and all of that. I could just pitch in. But I did, and I wasn't a 501c3 or a nonprofit, so I didn't get funding. I didn't apply for funding. I didn't get any grants or anything like that. It was a grassroots effort.
And that's something, Joy, that's when I met you. And that's something that I admire about you, is that you saw the need and you did it.
Right.
And through support of Ashland, of our community, wonderful things happened. You helped a lot of people, and that's something that I admire.
Oh, yeah.
And by that, I believe, Joy, that you were able to have a pulse on the people.
Absolutely.
What the people need, and those people who are so marginalized that they're invisible.
Right. And for the people who aren't invisible, I ran that underground shelter in the Railroad District. And it's one of the most sought after neighborhoods in Ashland, right? So, I did it successfully. I personally took the time. I walked the neighborhood. I introduced myself. I said, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And I need your help. So here's my phone number. Call me. If there's an issue you see, call me. If there's something that you would like to see happen, call me. So, I overcame that NIMBY kind of thing that often happens when we talk about
NIMBY. So
NIMBY is an acronym for not in my backyard.
Exactly.
And I mean, I understand why it's there.
Yeah,
I
of
really
course.
do. And I'm not the one to say it doesn't matter, because it does matter. But what I am saying is that with the right way, doing it in the right way, and involving those neighbors who have concerns is one of the best ways to overcome. And people were a little nervous at the start of things, and as time went on, and I would periodically check in, how's it going? Are you noticing anything that's, concerning to you? I built bridges of trust, and that really mattered to me. And I think that's part of the process to overcoming NIMBY is, involving people who have concerns and really listening.
So wait a second. So having people that, or dealing with people that have concerns, working collaboratively with others. Wait a minute. It sounds like exactly what we do on the city council. So that's passion to me. I mean, you just kind of explained it. So, the thing that I wanted to ask is I went through your literature, and, what's resonates strong with me is good fiscal stewardship, and I know, Gina is a fervent believer in this. We've been the two voices on the city council say, let's back up a step. What's the implications for whatever policy we do? How is that going to impact the citizens of Ashland, right?
Yeah.
And I see that in a lot of the stuff that I've read for you. So I think you've said, housing, which you've just kind of passionately described, is a super important point, but also the budget. So I think it's important that people, understand what your thoughts are around the budget and what you believe and how you will try to impact change, once you're on the city council. So can you go into that a little bit?
Sure, I sure can. One of my top issues is the budget, and here's why. Ashland got $4.3 million federal COVID bailout money, right?
Yes, it
and
did.
Sadly, generally speaking, many cities around Oregon actually took those funds and took it back to their small businesses and helped them get through the hardest parts of the COVID pandemic, right? But because we have a structural deficit in our general fund to the tune of about $2 million. And so the decision was made to put that $4.3 million federal COVID bailout into the general fund.
Right.
And that's how we got to the air quotes balanced budget.
Right.
But nobody ever addressed the issues that got us to having the $2 million structural deficit, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So that's still out there, and we can't just keep moving forward doing things the way that we've always done them, because it's clear that's a problem.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is, yes, it's a complicated issue, and I totally understand that, but I also believe that fundamentally it's about looking at what's your income, what are your expenses. And
so you're talking about like a household budget.
Kind of.
Why is it different though, right? I mean, that's the thing that I've pounded in my head. Wait a minute. How can you be, saying that, the city government budget is completely different, complex, you need a PhD from Stanford to figure it out. No. And it's the same.
Same
thing.
Principle.
Yeah. It's stop with that malarkey.
Right.
That's over. We're done doing that. I'm 56 years old. Stop lying to me. Tell me the truth, right? Yeah. That's what I want to know.
It's living within our means.
Totally living within your means.
And we haven't done that.
Of course
we
haven't.
And that's part of why I support a priority-based budgeting. Let's look at all of the things that we need to have, right? And looking what do we need versus what do we want.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because last night Councilor Duquesne mentioned it, but I've been a dog on this point as well, and that is saying to the city, okay, if we're talking about prioritizing our budget, tell us the services that the city provides broken down in each department. So then we can say, hey, okay, well, if these are the services that the citizens of Ashland prioritize, right, how much resources do we need to allocate to deliver that service, right?
Right.
But it's 2022, and we don't have that information.
Still.
Yeah.
So, and I know Councilor Duquesne actually asked for it again last night, which thank you for staying on top of that, because that's an important piece that we haven't seen yet.
Well, something that, Sean and I are in our sophomore year on council, and looking at where we were then and where we are, where's the progress? We are a new council,
Yes.
and the council's getting ready to change again
Right.
in the
Thank
positive
goodness.
direction,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so being able to work together and ask the right questions, and that's one thing I love about Councilor Moran, is that asking the right questions, even if they're uncomfortable,
They
that's
have
how
to
we
be
get
asked.
to. That's right.
Absolutely,
Yes.
they have to be
And all the
asked.
opposition, I don't like your tone. I don't give a rat's behind. I really don't. I'm asking you a question. If, quite frankly, if the information was clear and transparent and easy to access, maybe I wouldn't have to ask the question.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, I think we're getting there. I think it is a little bit frustrating that we kind of spin our wheels, a lot of times, but we need fresh blood. New way of thinking to attack the problems that we've tried to address.
Right.
Exactly.
And,
And I think-
I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but what I do have is the ability to look at something, and if I don't understand it, I'm going to ask questions until I do.
Right.
Because part
Exactly.
of my responsibility as a representative on council is to make sure that I can understand an issue well enough that I can go back and explain it to the public so that they understand. That's part of the
right.
transparency piece.
Absolutely.
So asking questions that are asking the right questions,
Right.
we have to do it.
Well, priority-based budgeting is the essence of where we need to go. I mean,
And that doesn't mean gutting the city. It
has
doesn't
nothing
mean
to do with gutting the city.
all of that.
It's
And
how
yeah.
do we spend our money,
Right.
right? If you look at the budget, you should be able to see the values of the community represented in that budget. You look at Ashland's budget, and it's like everything, And
Right.
back in 2015, I think we had a interim finance director that came in and said, if everything's important, nothing's important. Ashland's got to figure it out, but you can't stop doing this. And 7 years later, we're still playing this game.
Yeah.
So we'll get there.
For sure. But there again, I just want to kind of clarify that, having a priority-based budget does not equate to gutting city services.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
It feels awkward and uncomfortable when there's this narrative going around that I'm some kind of a
Fear-mongering is what it is, really.
Republican
Yeah.
kind of all these
Interesting.
labels, and I'm not interested in labels. What I'm interested in is action. I'm interested in compassion. I'm interested in doing the right thing for Ashland residents.
Right. No, I hear that, and that's wonderful.
So it's interesting how people perceive you, how people see us. I mean, all of us. I was called a Republican not so long ago. It was very, very funny. I've never.
I was,
right?
I was too, actually. Someone said on a postcard, I wonder who that was, about me being a far-right Republican.
Yes.
Yeah, when you searched, it came from Leave It to Beaver's dad.
Craver.
Unbelievable, these people. You know what? What that shows you is that they were afraid.
Yes.
Right? They're
Yes.
afraid to focus on the issues.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know what?
So let's call it something.
Let's call it.
Yeah, call it something.
Right. And I'm over the labels. Just look at look at their character.
Yeah.
Look at what they've done. What have you done for me lately? So
Right.
Yes.
look at that.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, no, we were probably going to ask
Yeah.
the same thing because when you say look at their character, what differentiates you?
What differentiates you? Yeah. How do you differentiate? Exactly what I was going to say. How do you
Okay.
differentiate yourself from the person you're running against?
Yeah.
Well, being honest is probably one of the things that I would say that I am. I'm honesty, transparency, but look at voting record. Look at
Yeah.
a voting record, because I haven't had the privilege of sitting on council before, but I can certainly speak to my perspective, how I would have voted.
Okay.
Right? So, I know that Tanya, my opponent, she never met a rate that she didn't like, a rate increase. So, utility rates, she supports those, and she supports annual increases, right? The water treatment plant, she's supporting building that new expensive plant, right? And not for nothing, there wasn't even an environmental impact study done on that. But just saying. But she supports spending for an entirely new plant. And my position would be, I think that we should. We have 25 years left.
Yeah.
And I think we should be making the improvements as we go along, and utilize what we could have spent on something else. My fear is that the technology is changing so fast that by the time this thing could be built, that the technology has already shifted, and we may be behind the 8 ball. Does that make sense?
Oh man, that makes a ton of sense.
Right. So reopening the community center, I don't know what the problem is there. I know that City Council asked months and months and months ago, let's get this open, and here we are.
Well, I sponsored actually an amendment to actually have an ad hoc committee that would look at a cost-efficient way to open up the community center.
Yep.
It was supported by Councilor Staffinger, Councilor Duquesne, myself, and I think the mayor was the deciding vote to do it.
Right.
We went through the process, and then people at the end got upset again about, hey, we're not going to have a commercial kitchen or teak flooring.
No.
So we can't do it. It's like, guys, that's not, if down the line, if the budget permits us to put in a commercial kitchen, God bless your cotton socks, let's put it in.
Yes.
Right.
But let's open it and give it back to the community.
We need it.
Of course
the
we need it.
community needs it, and we don't need teak floors, and we don't need a commercial kitchen.
No.
Well, I look forward to seconding your motion when you're on the city council to get that done.
Yeah, absolutely. My position is I support reopening it with that ad hoc committee's recommended repairs.
There we go.
I'd like to see that happen. So, her position also, does Ashland face a budget crisis? Right?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know what to say other than yes, we do. So yes, we do, and I'll be looking forward to making shifts in the budget.
Can I just say one thing? We've been facing a budget crisis for 6 years,
right.
and the structural deficit, which we talk about in the general fund, is getting progressively worse. But the general fund is 40% of the entire budget, right?
Right.
And it's kind of like they've, the opposite side here is kind of push us in a corner and say, we can only talk about the general fund. It's like, wait a minute.
No.
The entire budget is what we need to look at.
Yes.
Okay, it's doubled in 10 years. Okay, so
I hope people are really listening to you, because
I sound like a broken record, but it's just like,
Sometimes.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, we're denying reality. The fiscal cliff is right here. We're facing a recession. Interest rates have gone from 0 to 7%, probably to 8 or 9 before it's all over. Who knows what kind of financial impact that's going to have on our town.
And think about how that affects our over 50% of rent-burdened residents.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's
Going back to gentrification.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Councilor Moran always says all roads leads to the money.
To the
And
budget.
It's true.
All leads lead to the budget.
It's true.
Right.
It's so true.
Well, sadly, she supported that $8 million City Hall bond too,
That went down in flames.
and rightly so. She supports Jackson County jail bond with the property tax increase. I would have opposed that, and I did.
Right.
So, when things are being put on a ballot, yes, that's how I voted. Police stop and identify power. Okay, that was a little tricky. And
Wait a minute, you don't believe in the First Amendment?
I do. I do. And I strongly believe that it posed an issue for Black, Indigenous people of color. And I think it also unfairly targeted LGBTQIA plus individuals. I was very opposed. And I did my part, and Tanya supported that.
Well, I believe what I see a very big gap between the two of you is that just going down that list, apparently there is no pulse on the people.
No,
There
there's a
is-
huge disconnect.
Exactly.
Huge disconnect.
And anyone who is going to be of service and represent the people of Ashland needs to be able to know and be able to understand what is needed in Ashland.
Right.
So,
And I just haven't decided to volunteer in the last 5 minutes. I mean, I've been doing this now for over a decade, so
Exactly.
I can definitely tell you.
exactly. And you're invested into Ashland.
Yeah.
You know,
You
and
bet I am.
and it's your actions, and to be able to see a need and then go and do it because
Right.
it's simply a need.
Right.
And
Roll up my sleeves and just do it. I don't need
Exactly.
fanfare. I don't need the whole look at me what I'm doing.
And I believe that's what city council needs. We need to be an acting council. Something that was brought up last night on council I thought was so good is when Mayor Aiken said to bring this back, and we were talking about 5G, and she said, bring it back. And she said, can we be the acting people on here? And our city attorney says, well, I doubt if council wants to stand on pavement and make a decision on the sidewalk. I'm like,
What is
why
that?
not? I
Yeah.
mean, we need to be engaged, however that
Absolutely.
looks,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I believe that this election coming up, having the right people in the seats when it's all said and done with,
Right.
I know in my heart that we can get things done.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, you take away that voter block and all good things are possible. All
Absolutely.
good things. And I'm excited to tell you the truth. I love Ashland. I love the people in Ashland. I have seen people, you know, it's just remarkable. I'm invested in the health of my community. I'm invested in the people that make their home here and send their kids to our schools. They matter.
Well, Joy, I appreciate your time today. And I think that we've gotten a lot of who you are and what you stand for.
I hope so. And, you know, if you have any issues that you'd like to discuss, or if you want to find out a little bit more, hop on my website. It's joyfate.org.
Very good. Joyfate.org.
Yes.
Well, we're happy to have you here, Joy, and that's the bottom line, Sean. What do you say?
Thanks, Joy.
Okay.
Joy Fate, City Council, seat number 2.
Yay.
Change that matters.
Indeed.
Hey, thank you for your time. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your service.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Cheers. Best of luck.